They say a mind is a terrible thing to waste. The they who first uttered this famous phrase was a civil rights hero by the name of Arthur Fletcher. A Negro politician who served in Nixon's, Ford's, Reagan's, and George H.W. Bush's administrations. He ran for lieutenant governor of Washington State in 1968, the same year Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated. And his bodyguard and limo driver was none other than the infamous Ted Bundy. Not that that means anything. I just thought it was interesting. Now, getting back to his famous quote, a mind is a terrible thing to waste. In this quote, Mr. Fletcher was suggesting that getting an education is the only way to not waste your mind. I mean, after all, it became the slogan for the United Negro College Fund. Now, before I begin, let me say this. Getting an education is key in this society if you want to make a living in this society. Now, that being said, we need to understand the operation of the education. When the very first school in the United States opened, it was for one purpose, and that is the socialization of the individual. And there is a theory involved in this idea of education. Your education is concerned with the needs of society. It's not concerned with your personal feelings or existing talents, unless they can be monetized. It's an institution, just like other institutions. But it's not an institution of learning as much as it is an institution or weapon for indoctrination. When we look at the definitions for both words, we find an almost identical concept. One is the process of teaching beliefs, and the other is the process of learning how to behave in the system of those beliefs. So, while it is true that a mind is a terrible thing to waste, what we put in the mind can be just as terrible if we don't understand the system. Education can limit the thought process, and thus the greatness of the mind, if the student isn't made aware of the process. Education, again, is an institution, just like any other institution. And an institution is yet another belief system put in play by people who may or may not have your best interests in mind. Meaning, we were born into these institutions, and acceptance without investigation is a critical mistake. The same can be said about the medical industry, the political and legal fields, and most certainly religion. As stated before, you were born and socialized into these institutions, and without critical investigation, you've come to accept them as real. Even to the detriment of you and your family's physical and mental well-being. A prime example of the indoctrination into these systems is prohibition. When the government wanted to end liquor sales, the public voted that way. And just like that, liquor became illegal. They had cute little slogans and one hell of an ad campaign. You had the church behind it. They even called alcohol the devil's juice. It's still called spirits to this day. But to be totally factual, alcohol is what drug dealers are today. What do you think Eliot Ness, Al Capone, the Untouchables, if you're old enough to remember that series, the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, what do you think this was all about? Murder Inc. Not the rap coalition, I mean the real Murder Inc. was a Jewish group of killers hired by gangsters to do their dirty work. They had ride-bys. They blew up bars and all that. The public at large was scared, like they are today. Angry, like they are today. And ready to do something about it, like they are today. So what did they do? They legalized it. They took away all the crime, all the vice. There was no more money in it. But that's not my point. My point is, how do you go from it's the devil's juice to making it legal? How does one go from saying you're going to hell for drinking to saying it's okay to drink in a span of a few years? Is it, or was it, an inspiration from the Most High? Is that what changed thought? Of course not. It was the law. In other words, what we deem evil, what we come to despise, comes from laws enacted by the government, not our own moral convictions. We're programmed to think the way the programmers want us to think. Cannabis or marijuana is another example. When I was young, weed was frowned upon. Everyone, especially the church, deemed it evil or satanic. Now today, there's no problem. Not only is it acceptable, it's viewed as a recreational drug. I don't smoke it. And if you do, that's your business. I'm simply trying to show you how the government controls our mind, not the Most High. With a decent ad campaign, they can make anything legal and acceptable. Which brings me back to a mind is a terrible thing to waste. This idea has prompted many to further their educations, and that's not a bad thing when we understand what we're getting into. When we understand their education is a weapon that can hinder us, not in the physical realm, because you can get the nice house, foreign car, the name brand gear, and the beautiful wife. But it can prove detrimental in the spiritual aspect of your existence, because it requires dedication to systems that are not only contrary to the spirit, but also against the Most High's commandments. Capitalism, for example, is built on buy low, sell high. Let's not play games. This suggests trying to swindle the other person. Period. I know that's how it works. And I know that's how you become materially successful. But is it right? It's legal and it's ethical in this system. But is it right? The education you receive is designed to put you in a position to put aside your spirit and sometimes integrity for a quote unquote better life. Doing that or not doing that is totally up to you. Especially when you understand that your mind is yours. But therein lies the issue. Our minds have been occupied. We've been played, bribed, conned, and tricked into thinking our mind is ours, when in reality, like the examples we covered with the alcohol and marijuana, our minds are controlled by this system. You know, you can go to school for the rest of your life and still not learn the truth about money, politics, medicine, history, or religion. A whole lifetime of learning what you're told to learn. We've been occupied. Your mind is your most powerful asset. And it's why they'd rather see you in a gym or on a field. Anywhere but inside your own mind. So when they teach you mind science, they only teach you the physical aspects. They don't explain where thoughts come from. They don't explain how thoughts are what resonate in the spiritual realm. Science doesn't let on that they don't know where thoughts come from. That thoughts are separate from the brain. That thoughts have the power to heal. This is all really just the power of the Most High Yah. When Yeshua in Matthew 4:4 tells the enemy, man can't live by bread alone, but on every word that comes from the Most High. Where do we receive those words? In our mind. In the seat of the soul. In the pineal gland. The ancients all knew about the importance of this organ. And of course, the enemy has tried to deceive us about it. But when Yeshua in Matthew 6:23 speaks on the eye, he speaks in a singular form. Yet we all know we have two eyes. So why does he speak in singular? That's because I believe he was talking about what some people call the third eye. But again, the enemy will try to pollute it, or poison it by his new age sciences. But don't be fooled. It's merely our conduit to the Most High. The crossroads between the physical and the spiritual. And it sits in the middle of the temple, as in the Holy of Holies. Nothing metaphysical or magical, just the gift of consciousness and communication from the Father Yah. You see, this is the place that the enemy is trying to hold dominion over through poisons like fluoride and yoga. Excuse me. Telling you to activate your pineal gland, knowing this allows him to take complete control. The only way to truly activate the pineal is with the Ruach HaKodesh, or the Holy Spirit. Not some mantras and chakras. As long as we reside in their spiritual system and take in their spiritual food, we will remain lost. You see, my friends, playtime is over. It's now or never. We've got to break away from their culture, their laws, their education. And most importantly, their religion. Peace.